Good afternoon once again, and thank you all for joining us. We do apologize for that technical hitch, but welcome to KTN Africa Speaks. My name is Doreen Biira, my Twitter handle at Doreen Biira. And today we're going to be talking about the DRC conflict, or the conflict in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and just how so many people, thousands of people, have fled their homes in search of safety. And we are looking at ways in which we can restore peace in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo that has been destabilized by the M23 rebels. As we all know, the negotiations between the DRC government and the M23 didn't go too well. They could have collapsed about a week and a half ago, and we are going to seek answers as to why the negotiations collapsed and what is the current status of the M23 rebels in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We're using the hashtag DRC conflict, and remember to also use the hashtag Africa Speaks. But first, let's take a look at Africa's top story.
Freedom of media in Kenya came under attack as the final amendments to silence the free press were earmarked for debate in the National Assembly, with draconian clauses intact. The Kenya Information and Communications Amendment Bill 2013 has created a tribunal which will be addressing media complaints as opposed to the stakeholder proposals of the function being done by the Media Council of Kenya. The tribunal will wield powers to impose hefty fines against individual journalists perceived to be critical of government and powerful individuals. They may be ordered to pay up to 1 million Kenya shillings as fines, while media houses will pay up to 20 million Kenya shillings. Worse still is the clauses will be the powers to recommend the suspension and or order the deregistration of a journalist at will, a function previously performed by the Media Council of Kenya. On social media, the debate continues. At Judged Ready, who is gagging the media? As long as they are doing nothing wrong, they shouldn't worry. The media believe they're always right. And at John-Allan is saying, however much the media could be wrong, gagging portends much more trouble than we have never imagined. Press freedom is chief. And at J. Chelagat is saying, the government of Kenya media gag is really saddening. How is democracy supposed to work when you stifle the fourth estate? And at Makodingo is saying exactly what is wrong with deregistering a journalist who violates their code of conduct. Other professions do it daily. And at Kibs 7671 is saying, and the members of the fourth estate should have known that when they opted to sleep with the government. And we also have at Scott Professor, who is saying, can we report Parliament to the Kenya police through SMS to 33,000? Stop taking us back 1,000 years. Leave the press free.
And that has been the top story, I guess, across East Africa about the media gagging in Kenya and the latest media bill as well. Now, let's take a look at what happens on the roads. There's a lot that does happen. Speeding and overloading are some of the reasons we're seeing accidents on the rise in the East African region. And today on Click, we're highlighting overloading.
Look what we have here. Just what would a traffic officer charge this Ugandan driver with? We posed this question on Facebook. Daniel Nyagwara says this is called dangerous loading, threatening the lives of other road users. And Tom Wessa is saying, Ish. Odhiambo Dima is saying, all. In fact, he is a terrorist. And Nikki Kamau is saying, no offense, he's a pastoralist, while Musinguzi Bran is saying, overloading. Mumbere Mbabazi Peter is saying, ignorance does sometimes make us spend more than the little we would have obtained out of transport business fares. Too much overloading there is, with high impact on the vehicle, rendering its longevity shorter, reduced effectiveness, increased fuel consumption, created mechanical problems, and eventually reap and operate on losses. This man, therefore, may not be able to achieve his buying price and profits of his vehicle. He's doomed.
Now, the conflict in the DRC continues, though there are reports that the M23 rebels have been overtaken by the DRC government forces. And this comes after failed talks between the DRC government and the M23 rebels. And some of the issues that did lead to the failure or the collapse of the talks was failure to agree on what had been laid down on the table. But let's take a look at this story before we can finally get into the big issue on the platform on Africa Speaks.
Congolese troops on Wednesday captured Bunagana, the main M23 rebel base near the eastern border with Uganda, driving the M23 rebels from their last stronghold. An officer from the UN mission in the country also confirmed that troops had taken control of the town, which lies about 80 kilometers north of Goma, the capital of the turbulent North Kivu province. The fall of Bunagana declared that the push by troops signaled practically the military end of M23. Congolese troops backed by a UN intervention brigade launched a major offensive at the weekend against the M23 rebel movement of army in North Kivu. In the past week, over 5,000 people have fled into Uganda to escape the fighting, which has moved close to the border, a figure that is said to double. About 22,500 people are said to have left their homes to move closer to Goma, which is controlled by government forces.
On the platform this afternoon, we're asking what will it take to end the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and is cessation the way to go in ending the DRC conflict? Tweet us using the hashtag DRC conflict and Africa Speaks. And joining me in studio this afternoon to discuss the same is Rosebell Kagumire from Uganda, who is an activist and blogger and has got massive experience in international conflict resolution. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Joy.
Well, before I can even go any further, what do you make of the DRC conflict? It's been over 2 decades. We've been seeing, war in the Democratic Republic of Congo that has in a way, affected the entire Eastern Africa region. What do you make out of it?
I think there are deep-rooted causes of conflict in DRC that most people know about, and it's the fact that the government has not been on the ground. In some places, people have never known what a government looks like, and still they are part of Congo. And as long as a country, DRC is a country where it's easier to form a military. It's easier to make a rebel group than a political party if you still have those conditions that the government is not in touch with the people. It becomes very challenging. It's very difficult to kind of prevent conflict. But also the fact that DRC, Eastern DRC, is very rich part of DRC, and also just like any other part of the world, there's certain identities and ethnicity that plays a role beneath the mineral wealth conflict that goes on.
Right. And now that Rosebell has put that clear, let's now join one of the negotiators of the M23 rebels, that is Rodger Lumbala, and we're going to try to get to him in just a short while. But back to Rosebell, the issue in the Democratic Republic of Congo, it has affected so many people. Thousands of people have been fleeing the Democratic Republic of Congo for years now, and some of them are being relocated to African countries, and some of them being taken to Western countries. But at the end of the day, how is relocation of people, continuous relocation of people without bringing peace back to the Democratic Republic of Congo, any part of the solution?
I think we must appreciate that bringing peace to DRC is a very intricate mission. It's not black and white, because it's layers and layers of conflict upon layers. You have local politics, you have ethnic politics, then you have national politics, you have regional politics. Right now we are talking about M23 because it came out as a very strong rebel group, because it had connections with neighboring countries who are supporting it. And it doesn't mean it's the only rebel group. There are many I think last year Oxfam had a report that there were over 25 militias and rebel groups in the eastern part of DRC. Those are which qualify, they use a certain number, and so we can't expect this to be ended militarily. There are certain issues in DRC that must be addressed, especially political issues, and we all know that President Kabila won an election which was very, many people found fraudulent. They don't see him as legitimate. So there are so many underlying issues in DRC than just the violence that we see, but also the fact that we have international networks, regional networks, tapping into the mineral wealth of DRC and fueling the conflict over decades.
Right, and now let's connect to the M23 negotiator, one of them, that is Rodger Lumbala. Rodger, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us on KTN Africa Speaks. What is the current status between the M23 rebels and the Democratic Republic of Congo government talks? Where are we right now? Rodger, can you hear me? Rodger, if you can hear me.
Now, no problem. But the delegation of government came yesterday in Kampala for to sign. It's possible. It's very possible for today to sign the agreement today.
Yes. And yesterday when I spoke to you, you did talk about the fact that you are yet to sign some sort of deal, but can you just enlighten us more on what exactly that was about and what exactly had the Democratic Republic of Congo government come in agreement to?
You know, yesterday the government the Kinshasa government don't come here. But this night, everybody is here now. We expect, we expect come it's possible to sign, because tomorrow there is the meeting in South Africa, the secession. Mr. Kionga going tomorrow, South Africa with this agreement. It's possible, very possible, madam, for today, but to sign the agreement today with Kinshasa government. It's possible.
Right, and according to the news we're receiving here, the United Nations reports that the M23 rebels have been flushed out of the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Is that true?
No, it's not. You know, M23 and Kinshasa government don't fighting, but it's international community ask M23 to withdraw. Only, madam.
Right, and from this day forward, what do we expect from the M23? Are we going to see cooperation with the DRC government? And what happens to the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo that you have so far displaced in thousands?
We went now for agreement, for to sign, because we want peace in Congo. You know, we have much problem in Congo. Kabila don't
Yes, and from your opinion, do you think that there is going to be an agreement reached between M23 and the DRC government?
Yeah, madam. We have too much problem because that is not a good president. He don't like everything. He wants exclusion, xenophobia. Like too much problem in Congo. But now we want peace. We don't like fencing now. If he has, if you could not from has to sign today, this evening, this agreement.
And you, being one of the negotiators of the M23 rebels, when you look at the people who are fleeing the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, don't you think that there needs to be peace in this part of DRC?
Of course, madam, we need peace. We like peace. We love peace. But Kabila don't like peace. In fact, the army of Congo is not strong.
Well, thank you very much, Rodger Lumbala, for speaking to us here at KTN. We do appreciate the time taken. We do appreciate the time taken to speak to us. That is Rodger Lumbala, one of the negotiators of the M23 rebels, speaking to us here about the DRC conflict. Rosebell, if you've been listening to Rodger and what he's saying, that, you know, they love peace, and he also says that they are yet to sign a deal between them and the DRC government. At the end of the day, do we really need to keep fighting to find a solution to certain small things that can be solved politically just by dialogue?
I don't think these are small things. People are negotiating in Kampala. These negotiations have been going on for a long time, and people who have covered the negotiations know that, you know, it's a rebel group, but we all know whom do they represent. Are they whose voice do they represent? At the end of the day, these are a bunch of men sitting and talking for an entire population that they don't represent. Sometimes some people try to push that if you represent the people, maybe bring civil society to the group, bring women, because currently, whether the government of DRC or the rebels, it's just men talking to each other and looking for cuts to benefit whoever gets a settlement. At the end of the day, this round of peace talks, M23 must agree to reintegrate in the army. It must reintegrate into the army, and the government of DRC must give assurances that it will handle the reintegration very well. It hasn't had good history in handling reintegration of former militia or former rebel groups in DRC, and that has been a current problem, not just with M23, but with other rebel groups in the Eastern DRC. They go in today, they sign agreements. A couple of months later, the agreements fall back, and we go back to fighting. And it's partly a government problem. It's partly because the rebels have much more to thrive on, the mineral wealth. They are better off probably rebels than actually a person in government.
Right. And when you started, you talked about the fact that for Congo, maybe there could be need for them to be a federal state. And how is this going to happen if we are seeing people who do not even know that the government exists?
And that has been the biggest problem, that the government is seated in Kinshasa, 1,000 kilometers. I don't know. Who knows what is going on? I just came back from the border with Uganda in the Bundibujo area, where a rebel group, the Ugandan government is the one saying it is the ADF NALU, but other people say it could be a different rebel group. This rebel group has displaced over 60,000 people since July. We haven't had much about it, but we are hearing about M23. But these people, some of them, I talked to them. These were old people. This was the third time in their life being displaced. They have lived in Uganda before 4 years. They go back, have lived 10 years in DRC, have moved on, and suddenly in one night, a rebel just comes and takes over. I asked people, was there a military there? They said no. They said we had only 2 soldiers at the barracks. This is a big barracks, and this is a near town in Beni district. There was no soldiers. The soldiers, when they had the gunshots, they ran away. I asked, have you ever seen MONUSCO? And one old man kind of said, I said, did you know MONUSCO? He said, Banakula Kuku. He said that those eat chicken, like they are only known because they are of their flashy lifestyle. They don't care about us. And this is the kind of the people are put between a hard place and a rock. They don't have anyone to fall back to.
Well, being put in a hard place and a rock, that is the situation in the eastern parts of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now let's join Dorothy Ngila, who is the Senior International Liaison Officer, the Academy of Science of South Africa. on a Google Hangout. Thank you so much, Dorothy, for joining us. What do you think it's going to take to end the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo? Dorothy, if you can hear me, what do you think it's going to take to end the conflict in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo? Dorothy, in the meantime, as we try to get her onto giving her opinion, we are discussing the DRC conflict and would like to also hear what you are saying about the DRC conflict. What do you think it's going to take to solve this problem? And at the end of the day, will this bring peace? Some people have talked about secession. Is secession the way to go for the Democratic Republic of Congo? We know that this is a mineral-rich country, and so we are asking, what will it take to end the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo? I don't know if we can now connect to Dorothy, but Dorothy, if you can hear me, would like to hear your opinion on the same, knowing that your interest lies in African issues. Now, let's just look at some of the tweets that are coming through here. We're seeing Shelmith Maureen, who is saying it's wise to settle underlying issues like political, ethnic, and resource issues. And we also have one coming in from Jonah Okal, who is saying DRC leaders ought to devolve their power for peace. Politicians ought to swallow their ego as well. And we have Jose, who is saying mineral exploitation should benefit the surrounding community, include the community in dialogue. And we also have one coming in here from at Kenyan Zulu, who is saying closing smuggling routes for diamond will ensure rebels aren't funded, and that could be one of the solutions as well. Well, do tweet us using the hashtag DRC conflict, and also Africa Speaks. Would like to hear what you have to say about a solution to the DRC conflict. And well, would also like to hear what Paul Kagame did say about Rwanda being in support of the DRC, war as well, that is on the side of the M23. And he did speak to Christiana Manpo a while ago when she asked him about whether or not Rwanda was supporting the M23 rebels. And he had quite a lot to say, but key was the fact that he seemed to lean on the side where he seemed to think that, or one was actually aligned to thinking that the M23 were being supported by Rwanda. Let's just take a look at what he had to say.
What will it take to get Rwanda to stop supporting the M23 militia in Congo? What will it take?
The solution is for us to come together as two countries, as a region, and be forward-looking and find solutions. Rwanda is very active in this, and we want a positive solution out of that.
So I hear you basically accepting what the UN has said, that your country is responsible for creating and helping create this M23 rebellion. And you have had a call from the United States, you've had a call from President Obama, who has underscored that this must stop, that you must stop and permanently end all support for that. Did you accept President Obama's insistence on that?
Well, first of all, Christian, I have to be clear, it's a big no on the issue of saying that I am accepting this kind of responsibility. But what I am accepting is that people can work together to find a solution to this problem that affects Rwanda, that also affects the Congo and the region. This is really what we are talking about. I don't want to keep on the issues of saying this one is to blame. The blame game doesn't help anyone, and in any case, some of the blames are placed wrongly. They are inaccurate. They are not, they don't make. So I'm just forward looking. I'm talking about finding a solution.
And that is Paul Kagame's stand, the president of the Republic of Rwanda, who did give his opinion as to whether or not Rwanda was in support of the M23 rebels. And he seemed to emphasize the fact that what we want is to work together. working together, being in support of the M23 rebels? Well, that is a question that still needs to be clarified on. Let me just read a few tweets here. At Kenyan Zulu is saying secession will be suicidal. There will be an apocalypse. A political solution needs to be pursued. And we also have one coming in from Anthony Nyasimi, who is saying regional leadership headed by IGAD and the Great Lakes Committee on Dispute and EAC ought to lead in the DRC conflict resolution. Rosebell, you just returned from one of the refugee camps in Uganda, close to the border of the DRC. How bad is the humanitarian situation? Because we know that the Democratic Republic of Congo, women have suffered the gravest of human rights abuse. So what did you see there, and what does it, bring out in the picture of international community help?
Yeah, I went to Bubukwanga transit camp. It's on the border with Uganda in Bundibujo district, and this is out of the conflict in Beni district. This has a little link with M23 actually. So we have refugees coming into Uganda from Bunagana, from Bundibujo, and from Koboko. There's a new rebel group that has been reported called M18. So we have different refugees coming in, but where I visited, people since July, when this attack on their area happened, people are still coming in. On an average, this transit camp was receiving 250 refugees per week. Even if the attack had ended, people had been displaced. This attack was very specific because there was not, when we interviewed women, there was not cases of sexual violence. Actually, they were just forcefully displaced, that the rebels said, we need this place, just go to a refugee camp in Uganda. It's very clear that these rebels know exactly where the refugee camps are. At this camp, of course, many agencies struggle to provide for people. People have been working, digging, and farming, leaving their farms, and suddenly they have nothing. They approach with nothing, with children to feed. There's a lot of malnutrition. Of course, there's a lot of also support, but the refugees at the camp are given a chance to go to be relocated to a refugee settlement. So in Uganda, we have camps and settlements. A camp is only a transit. A settlement is more like a home. You're given a plot of land where to live. You are finally accepted that I'm going to live in this country. And there's thousands of refugees living there. And when we came to the settlement, actually the situation was much easier because people are more settled, but they still lack food. They lack basic services. And there's it seems that when people leave a camp at the border and they go to a settlement, there's limited support that comes from outside.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Rosebell. It was such an honor having you in studio to speak to us about the situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Rosebell Kagumire, right there, an activist and blogger, as well as with expertise in international conflict resolution. And we've come to close of the show, but this conversation continues online. What do you think is a solution to the DRC conflict? And do you think cessation would be able to bring the conflict to an end? We're using the hashtag DRC conflict and Africa Speaks. I'll wind up with a tweet here from @Arab Mel, who is saying the DRC conflict is fueled by neighbors and their interest in the country's natural resources. Rwanda and Uganda have been accused of supporting the M23 rebels, and well, Uganda has denied it. Rwanda seems to be split in between, saying yes and no, but at the end of the day, we are looking at finding a solution to the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Thank you all for joining us. We had Dorothy Ngila online, whose sound just seemed to have a little bit of a problem there. But thank you all for watching. Until next Saturday, let's meet again. My name is Doreen Biira.